All right, Samantha, so we're going to do what's called a sound check. I need you to count down from 10 for me, okay? Anytime you're ready.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Perfect.
This week, Pass Christian was one of only 3 school districts in the state to receive a star rating. And for years, it was a level 5 school district, the best rating in the state. So what's the secret to its academic success? An educational organization has been searching for answers and is featuring schools in the past in a documentary.
I have something important to discuss with you. I'm here because I want to talk with you about your education and what's expected of all of you in this new school year.
We need to hold ourselves accountable and hold our education system accountable because our schools are not performing. A majority of all children in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade of all races are not able to read at grade level or compute at grade level. What are you going to do in this globalizing economy if you can't read and compute at grade level? Well, you're being sentenced to dead-end lives.
One of the things we know is that we have an overflow of information. Students at any moment can tap into a rich tapestry of information that used to be held in books in the library and now is held virtually around the world. Do students with these new technologies actually have the capacities to think through and filter that information and be able to decide what's valuable information, what's biased information, and what might be propaganda that might be influencing how they're thinking and feeling? How is it that you can then deal with that information if in the classroom you're not asked to think through problems?
And the truth is the erosion of our schools is now permeated into middle-class schools. So it's no longer just a problem over there, like the poor people. It's now in all of our schools, all of our public schools. And there are some wonderful, great schools.
And there's a lot that is working. There's a lot of schools where teachers have created learning communities themselves. We're constantly learning about how children learn and how to support that.
But overall, we're failing too many kids. And the revelation is this affects all of us.
And time, I think, is the most crucial factor.
The first thing they're probably going to ask is, do y'all actually wear shoes? Because I've actually heard that a lot.
I think the perception of us is that time-old perception that we are, kind of
the least well-spoken, looks the shabbiest and most confused.
Supposedly, we're all obese,
lazy, barefoot, country,
uneducated,
hillbillies.
I think the stereotypes continue because they're easy sound bites. Categories that are easy to remember, that are comfortable with those definitions, however they might be.
The biggest challenge that we have is that the stereotype hasn't been debunked. William Faulkner's from here. Eudora Welty's from here. The blues was born here. We're already there.
The Pass Christian School District has always demonstrated a commitment to excellence.
We have 4 schools in our district. 2 elementary schools, K through 5, that feeds into 1 middle school, 6 through 8, which then feeds into the high school, 9 through 12.
70% of our students are free and reduced lunch, which means they basically live in poverty. A lot of our children come from a very, very unsettled home life. There are things that are happening that they have no control over. They come to school sometimes and they're in disarray because of what's happened at home or in their neighborhood.
When I first came here, our school district was not known to be very good at academics.
We had done pretty well over the years, but we were never happy with the bell curve that we had. Most of our students were scoring in the middle, getting a 2 out of a 4.
We had a number of our students who were proficient. We were doing well, but we knew we could do better. We wanted to move those students who were proficient into the advanced level.
So we've worked very hard over the years to try to turn our district around. We looked at research-based programs that were sustainable. Out of those, we decided on 3, and Thinking Maps was one of them.
If you look back to the 1950s, the early 1900s, and before then, there was this idea that intelligence and IQ is absolutely static, that we're born into an intelligence quotient and we're there for the rest of our lives. Now we know that intelligence is adaptable and that our minds and our brains are adapting all the time. We look at the world that we live in as human beings. There's the biological world, the ecosystems that we live within. There are cognitive structures in those biological systems. If you just look outside and you see a tree, you can see the sequences in it. You can see the growth. You can see the causes and effects. You can see the categories that exist. And you can actually see the spatial structure. If we step into the human brain, we see these very same cognitive processes at work at a neurological level. How do the thinking maps fit in with all of this? They provide a visual, spatial means for really capturing those patterns and engaging students at the most fundamental levels of cognition. A teacher might begin by asking, what do you know about apples? Students would use a circle map to identify and define an apple in different contexts, really brainstorming. Well, it's red, you can eat it, it's good for you, it's fruit, it grows. But then the teacher may ask about the descriptors or qualities of the apple, and the students will learn to use a bubble map to cluster their ideas together. So the apple is juicy, red, round, smooth, and hard. How does an apple compare to another fruit such as a banana? So this is the thinking process of comparison and contrast. Well, both can be eaten. They're healthy for you. They can be bruised. But an apple is red, it's round, whereas a banana is yellow, long, and has a heavy peel. How would you categorize or classify an apple? Students learn to use a tree map for this thinking process, such as apples are a type of fruit, and fruit is a type of produce. And then there are other members in the category of fruit. Of course, to understand an apple, students would want to use their part-whole reasoning. we introduced the brace map as the thinking map that enables them to really look at the object and its subparts. For example, the apple has a skin, the flesh, the core, down to the seeds. Another essential question and a linked cognitive process is the sequence. Students learn to use a flow map to show the cycle of growth of an apple from seed to tree to fruit. But sequencing should not be confused with another process and question: what are the causes and effects? For example, when we say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, we are really thinking about the causes and effects for good health. Students learn to use the multi-flow map to show what causes influence good health and the multiple effects. So the last map for this example is based on the thinking process of seeing analogies. The bridge map really helps students to see that an apple represents good health, just as a light bulb represents creative thinking. Well, so it is with the 8 thinking maps. Together, they're used by students for creative thinking as well as analytic thinking and concept development within and across every content area, and really for lifelong learning.
First experience I had with thinking maps is when we were introduced to them by crashing in a community college class in a neighboring area. And when we walked in, we saw students of all ages there, all walks of life, some older students with children, some football players struggling with their reading, but they were all focused on a review. And in that review, they were using the thinking maps to help them remember the information and organize their thoughts. And when they finished the review, they all talked about what the maps meant to them and how their grades had suffered before and how the maps had really brought their grades up. It was at that point I really thought that we might be onto something. One of the teachers just took hold of it, and she really put her heart and soul into teaching. Her class was called a gifted class for all students. It had special ed students in it, it had regular ed students, it had extremely advanced students. They were all writing, and they were all using the maps. Before the maps, only 3% of our students had scored advanced or a 4. The year after she used these maps with her class, we had over 30% of our students to score 4.
In a small district, that's quite a jump.
You know, when our leadership team met, we looked at that, we talked about it.
They're actually clarifying their thinking by asking us questions.
And made the decision that we wanted to implement thinking maps across all grade levels.
It was at that time that Pass Christian decided that they would become a Thinking Maps district.
Well, we used a brace map when we were breaking down like the parts of the earth, like the layers of the earth, like the crust, mantle, and the inner core and the outer core in science. And we used like some bubble maps to describe certain people in like social studies. And tree maps. We used tree maps in math. We used a circle map to describe Maniac McGee, and then we used a flow map to put what he did, like, and how he changed in the story. And at the end, he wasn't the same as he was in the beginning. In the writing test, we did lots of extra writing before to get us ready for it, and we practiced using the maps and like not really writing the paragraphs yet, just using the maps, and then we would start writing them after. We used the 2 maps, the flea map and the circle map, to start our writing and get the ideas in our head, and then we started to write off of the maps. I felt a little nervous, but I knew I was prepared and ready for it.
When our scores came back, we were tops. Pass Christian School District in Language Arts was number 1. Number 1 in 3rd grade language, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Number 1. We were thrilled.
While I won't tell you that it is solely because of Thinking Maps, it is not. But certainly Thinking Maps has played a tremendous role in helping us to achieve what we have achieved academically.
Any kids can be number 1. if they're held to that standard, and if their teachers are held to that standard, and if the schools are held to that standard. And that's what our community does. We expect our kids to do better. It's an amazing feeling to feel like we have come so far, and to know that, you know, people, you know, think Pass Christian, they're so small. There's one high school with 500 kids, and to show them that we can compete. We can compete with those high schools and those middle schools and those elementary schools that are in rich suburbs where all the mamas and daddies are doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs, you know. Our kids are just regular kids, and they're the top of the heap.
To put it in perspective for a kindergarten and a first grader at home, not having any idea that this would come to be, but to say to them, if we come back to nothing, what would you have wished you had?
The area around here after Katrina looked like a war zone.
It was as if a bomb had gone off.
You smelled this terrible smell of dirt and wet mud that just seemed to hang in the air forever. And your world was gray. The wind actually took the trees and just stripped them of all color. Everywhere you looked was this endless brown, this endless gray.
Where is everybody? There was nobody here. It was dead. Nobody was here.
Pass Christian was literally wiped off the map. There's no other way to say it.
The cell phones were out, communication was down. That was one of the creepiest parts after the storm, was to feel that cut off from your own property. You're cut off from knowing how your neighbors fared, how your friends fared.
Sewage lines had burst, and there was, of course, unclean, unhealthy water flooding the town, so you were unable to get in safely. When they did let us back in, we had to get a series of shots in order to enter the city and sign a waiver saying that we would not sue if we caught some horrendous disease.
Our students their heads were sticking out of roofs of buildings, trying to get away from the water. Can you imagine a sixth grader who has to come to school and learn after he spent 8 hours with his head sticking out of an attic, waiting for somebody to rescue him?
85% of our students and our employees had totally lost everything.
I mean, everything. Some people didn't even have a slab left because when they went back, the storm had taken their slab away.
When I went down to where my school used to be, and there was nothing left, it was more than I could take in.
What do you mean everything's gone? She said, everything. What about Pass Christian Elementary School? It's gone. What about Pass Christian Middle School? It's gone. We've worked so hard for so many years to bring our school district to be one of the best, if not the best, in the state. And now it's gone.
It was an unbelievable time in our lives. And we didn't think we'd ever recover.
As one of the principals said, we lost everything. We lost our homes. We lost our schools. We lost our town. But our children did not lose the ability to think.
Our superintendent and support staff was committed to being sure that we returned, because we were not going to lose a year in the life of a child and their education on our watch.
We just cannot let that happen. We've all worked too hard. It's a great place. We've got to do whatever we need to do to get our school up and going again.
Physically separated from the other area which sustained the most damage is a small elementary school.
The Lille only had 4 feet of water, so they squeegeed that out and brought in some fans, I guess.
And on this elementary school campus, there was a block of land that belonged to the school district.
You know, we've got all that property out there. We could clear cut those trees, we could bring in fill dirt, and we can put trailers out there.
We had to rebuild everything, going from ground zero.
With the district clearing the land to make room and putting in red clay to provide a foundation, 26 trailers were bussed in from FEMA.
So we were very excited when we had the first trailer show up after cutting down trees and having just land and coming from ground zero to something.
We were blessed. People from all over the country sent things in.
Water first, food, then for the schools, notebooks.
Paper and supplies.
I took a guy into the classrooms one time and I said, everything you see in these classrooms was donated by somebody in the United States or across the world. Everything you see.
We returned to school, although it resembled nothing of what we knew to be school.
We were very low on materials, so the school had to provide everything, which was very hard because our comeback rate of students was very high. We had a lot of people come back because of their passion for the school.
And I look around the students and I know that they have been through a lot, and I had one child who spent the evening on top of his rooftop praying that he would make it through.
Not only did we have to come back and not have much and deal with rebuilding our own lives, but then we had to try and teach children who had gone through this catastrophic event.
And we would have, we didn't have nearly enough for all the teachers that we had before, so we had 2 teachers to a classroom.
In my particular trailer, we had 5 teachers who shared. The special education teachers and speech therapists and myself.
And we didn't have a cafeteria. We ate lunch in the gym, on the floor, out of paper bag lunches.
We didn't have any books. We didn't have any computers. And we didn't have much of anything. We had UNICEF classrooms in a box and donated spiral tablets and dry erase boards.
And that's okay. We at least had 4 walls. We had a place we could go in and we could bring children and we could teach.
It was emotional. It was physically tiring.
You would have meltdowns. You know, it would become so overwhelming when you would think about losses. So we used that trailer bathroom as our mental health room. And you could take 10 minutes and go in, and another teacher could pick up and teach wherever who was teaching at that point in time had left off and take over, and then you could come back out and face it again. So sharing a trailer actually bonded a group of us into a very strong sisterhood.
That was how we started school in October, but we couldn't have been happier to be back at school.
When we came back after the storm and they told us, oh, you don't have to worry about testing, you just worry about getting your lives together. And then a couple of months later they said, well, you are going to have to worry about testing.
Oh, we did. We tested. It was business as usual. We tested, we had exams, we did everything, you know, the state tests, we did everything.
85% of our students and our employees had totally lost everything. I'm telling you everything. They went back to a slab. Not only had they lost their homes, all of their worldly possessions, they'd also lost that school that they had been teaching in for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. So it was really, really difficult. When our test scores came back, our standardized test scores, even though we had lost 6 weeks of school at the elementary level, 7 weeks at the high school level, our students still performed as top performers in the state. We were then a level 5, which was considered the best in the state, superior. We were still superior, and all of our schools still met the stringent AYP requirements.
The thinking maps were very fortunate for us then because we didn't have textbooks, we didn't have worksheets, we didn't have copy machines. We had our whiteboards and we had donated paper. Our kids' test scores didn't show that. They didn't reflect that they had not been in school. They were just what we would have expected had we been in school the whole time.
So with our experiences, we've realized it is not about the material things. We can replace those. But it does become about the things that have become a part of you that you take with you wherever you go.